Energize is a campaign to empower, inspire, and motivate young girls to pursue science, especially if they're not aware of the options that they have after pursuing science at university. Because what I found was that even in my school, the reason girls opt out of doing science is because they feel that, oh, I don't want to be a doctor or a scientist. And it's so much more than that. There is so
Yeah.
much scope to um, have so many various different careers actually, and which they might not be aware of. So my main aim of this campaign is to get the girls in touch with a mentor who can guide them, and to create this sort of mentor mentee program, which would be helpful for them because they'll get a broader idea and more information if they speak to someone who's in a different field but had been at a similar position. Share some of your experiences and your roles and responsibilities and where you are now.
Right. So I lead a research group that looks at how human chromosomes, are captured by microtubules. And we are one of the leading groups who looks at it in the United Kingdom. It's a research problem where not much has been done, largely because of limitations in live cell microscopy. But we have been able to uniquely combine the strength of computational analysis with microscopy tools to, for the first time, we are able to now visualize how chromosomes are actually captured along the walls of microtubules. So our work has been funded by various research funding bodies, international and also national bodies. Our largest support came from Cancer Research UK. We have been funded by the Medical Research Council, the Royal Society, and also the Japanese Society for Promoting Science, JSPS. And over the years, we have also developed interest in other roles of microtubules. For example, how do microtubules define the plane of cell division? And these questions are fundamentally important to understand why cancer cells misbehave. And that's the reason we are pushing forward this research area so that we can fully understand what's the difference between cancer cells and normal cells and why they stop listening to the body's normal programs and instructions. Apart from my research group that I lead, I also regularly teach at university. So I'm a senior lecturer at the Queen Mary University of London, where I teach biochemistry, cell biology, molecular biology, and these are mainly students who have just come from school and they are looking forward for a university program.
So, when you studied at high school and university, what did you take up or what did you study?
Right. So I had a very broad education until undergrad, I would say. So I had all sciences, so biology, chemistry, physics, math, all the way till I finished at my bachelor's, and that's because I liked everything and I didn't want to leave anything behind. And then the last year you can specialize, and then I specialized in biochemistry. So that was until my undergrad, when I just had the luxury of not leaving anything behind. But then in my master's, I had to leave something, and it was slightly easier to leave them behind because I got into a unique research by master's program. So that was all 3 years of research. And you basically go around picking courses that are useful for your research. So it was not like, okay, you have to study this book and that book. But it was more like, okay, this is your research problem. Now you go and figure out what books you have to study, and you sign up for courses, and there were a bunch of courses. in a very premier institute, the Institute of Sciences, Indian Institute of Sciences. I was in the research program in Tata Institute for Fundamental Research. So they had a tie-up with IISc, so I could take programs either from NCBS, which was based in Bangalore, or I could go to IISc to pick my courses. So after that, I was lucky to get one of the most prestigious PhD awards that one can get from India, which is a Nehru scholarship, which allowed me to do a PhD in Cambridge. During my Cambridge University degree for PhD, that's when I made my first set of high impact research discoveries. So during my master's, I was already lucky to have papers, so I did have discoveries. But the ones that I made during my PhD seeded my scientific career, if you were to say, because I started studying cell division, and I was so captured by the dynamic nature of the process that I wanted to understand how is this process controlled, and that has been my interest, research interest, ever since.
Wow.
And then after my PhD, I went for a postdoctoral program, which ran for 6 years. That was at MIT and Harvard, where I looked at how chromosomes were captured by microtubules, and I discovered a few key proteins that are important for the process. Then I moved to Cambridge to set up my own research group, and we recently moved to Queen Mary, where our research group studies what I just mentioned.
So what inspired you to take up the sciences or study sciences at that time when not a lot of women, I would say, were into doing?
The problem was not studying, so there were degrees for science for women, so it was not that bad. But what happens is after the degree, people don't pursue science. They think of it as a path to getting a degree, and then scores, and women usually scored very well. They were dedicated, disciplined, they scored very well, but they never pursued. And that's where the difference is probably. I had many friends who studied. I think we were a class of around 40, and there were 4 such classes, so there was like at least, a bunch of people, I would say. But of those who pursued science, probably like 1 or 2 pursued science. And that's where the bottleneck is. If you don't pursue in the first place, then looking up to you become leaders is very hard to say.
Yeah.
Right? So how do we get people to pursue science? That has to start right from school, I think. People have to be told that you're not studying just because somebody tells you to learn the facts, but you're doing it because one day you might apply it to learn something more. And that would require more resources for laboratories, and I think that needs promoting.
So what was your most enjoyable moment in your journey through such a diverse journey, I would say, in STEM, in science especially? What was the moment that you remember even now and you feel that was...
I mean, I was trying to think. I don't know whether anybody answers such a question effectively. So I was trying to think. I think there's no one single moment. I don't know whether, it's possible for some people there is, or for me it's yet to arrive. I think every time you discover an answer to an unanswered question, right? When you realize that nobody on the planet knew about an answer for this question, and you're the first one to see, either it's in the form of a microscopy image or a gel. You have had a hypothesis, and you've defined an experiment, and you've seen the answer, and you've discovered a small part of a universal truth, which is going to last. That's really very happy. That brings you joy, right? And that happens, fortunately, in my job. Fortunately, it happens more often than what it would happen in an average person's life. So I would say, so I have a lot of students who come in and do research. So I give them the questions, give them the skills, and they go out, work hard, and tell me the answer. So I think There's nothing more joyful than that.
Hmm.
Uh,
So I'm sure you must have faced some challenges in your journey, whether it was in your journey as a woman pursuing science. So could you
right.
share some of these and how you overcame these challenges?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question for all of us to think about
Mm-hmm.
because these challenges change with time.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the challenges, the largest ones that I have felt so far is having to distribute your time between, um, your work that
Mm-hmm.
needs you and you're passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
and your family that also needs your care and
Mm-hmm.
attention, and which you are equally passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where the problem comes because if you are passionate about anything, the idea is that it will take all your time.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can't divide all your time between two things. So understanding how you can divide it and still not feel disappointed has
Mm-hmm.
always been a challenge.
Mm-hmm. So I was just going to ask a similar question. So did you face any bigger trade-offs? So how did you manage a work-life balance?
Uh, I think we all face trade-offs as we progress, whether it's a man or a woman,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that's basically means if you want to put singular effort into something,
Mm-hmm.
and or if somebody says that's the only way you can succeed,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you're passionate about
Mm-hmm.
something, it's not even a singular effort. You're just always thinking about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then what the other things that get left behind
Mm-hmm.
need to be attended to. So I think that that's something, at least in science, that's true for both men and women. It's
Mm-hmm.
not something just for women. Even men have to drop everything and then suddenly start working. So what do?
Mm-hmm.
They say that, oh, I used to play football, I don't play so much anymore, I play
Mm-hmm.
less. Or they say, oh, I took it up and then I dropped it. So
Mm-hmm.
for us, or for me, childcare was something like this. I could see that my child, no matter how much money we could not be as happy as she was with me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I was happy as well. So, what did I do? I stopped some of my hobbies that I used to do by myself, like
Mm-hmm.
let's say painting or handicrafts. And I started doing it with my child. So, luckily, I have a daughter, so
Mm-hmm.
she enjoys very similar things at
Mm-hmm.
this the moment. So we do jewelry or we paint together. So
Mm-hmm.
you try to reorganize and refocus your other things,
Mm-hmm.
so that you still have the ability to follow your passion. Because although I'm very passionate about research, I can only do it if I'm funded. And
Mm-hmm.
funding at some level is internationally competitive. So,
Mm-hmm.
you have to put in the time that it requires. And it's probably not just for science, it's true for any field.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say somebody wants to be an athletic, and if they want to be a world champion, they have to put that effort.
Mm-hmm.
Then all your other things, like I don't go ever shopping because that is easy nowadays. You can just sit online and finish it
Mm-hmm.
off. Little things like that just got removed from my life completely,
Mm-hmm.
so that I now save time for others.
Mm-hmm. So, over the span of your career, have you seen the role of women change in the workplace? So, like, have you seen more women coming into science and
Yeah,
research?
yeah, I would say just within my span of career, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe 10, 15 years,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen, so for instance, when I started off, there was no um, allocation of um, time
Mm-hmm.
to balance out the time that's lost during, I don't know, like pregnancy
Mm-hmm.
or childcare, because those are such demanding times mentally
Mm-hmm.
and physically and time wise. There was no understanding that women have to be somehow compromised for the time
Mm-hmm.
lost in a world where everything was becoming so competitive.
Mm-hmm.
And men used to be winning 90% of those awards simply
Mm-hmm.
for the reason that women would drop off during that time,
Mm-hmm.
and they had to have one or two children.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is a greater understanding of it, and the research funding bodies allow you to take 1 or 2 years off, and this is good for both maternal and paternal
Mm-hmm.
uh, activities.
Mm-hmm.
I think there should still be a greater recognition, um, which might soon come, um, among women, that these are activities that you like, but they don't have to hamper um, your career or your passion,
Mm-hmm.
as long as you find the right way to manage. And people are willing to listen to it. So
Mm-hmm.
if you nowadays tell people that,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I am going to be on a year off
Mm-hmm.
for child care,
Mm-hmm.
they don't question it anymore. At least not openly, because it's
Mm-hmm.
illegal to do that. Which is good, because it was not the case when I started off. People always used to ask, "Oh, when do you plan to have your child?" Because this is a very critical time of your career.
Mm-hmm.
But now people don't have that conversation, because they know if you had your child, then the work will just compensate for that time loss.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a big difference that's
Mm-hmm.
happened.
So having such a varied STEM career and because you're so passionate about it, what advice would you give young schoolgirls who want to maybe pursue science or are getting interested in science?
Right. So what I would say is, so if I look back, what are all the key things that helped me? Is a family and friends environment. So I had a bunch of friends who were like me, interested in observing and keeping
Mm-hmm.
journals and records, and my parents promoted it, and their parents promoted it.
Mm-hmm.
And as a child, like as a really young child, up to 10 years, we have that curiosity naturally in
Mm-hmm.
us. We look at a flower, we want to know its name, we want to understand why it's different from other flowers. We look at animals, and then we want to know everything about them. And
Mm-hmm.
somehow, with a very formatted way of learning, which is school
Mm-hmm.
rote learning, we forget to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should be actively discouraged, because we are actively encouraging people to just score marks and compete that way.
Mm-hmm.
People now start to just learn for the reason of scoring marks, and then
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like a chore. And I think um, that fortunately did not happen for me and my ring of friends. And
Mm-hmm.
interestingly, all my friends in that ring have all pursued some form of science career, which makes me feel, allowing the child to, especially when they're at school,
Mm-hmm.
to not just focus on marks and that form of learning, but also encouraging them to ask questions about anything that they like,
Mm-hmm.
will let them keep that childlike curiosity and interest. That's one key thing. And the other thing is, I would recommend students to pursue as many things as possible,
Mm-hmm.
because not everyone needs to be a doctor or an engineer or a
Mm-hmm.
scientist. And science just gives you a base for a scientific way of thinking. So it's more, I think, a platform that people should use to look at the world,
Mm-hmm.
not really to score marks,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is what unfortunately the system teaches you. They say that, okay, if you're a science and you get an A star or an A plus plus, you are going to do well.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, what happens is those who have A star, yes, they learn how to build that way of thinking, or else they wouldn't have gotten that A star. But it's not because of A star they're going to progress. They are going to progress because they managed to learn that way of thinking. And I think we have to teach them to ask questions. That's one. The second one is we should let them the freedom to explore more things than regular. Okay, if you took biology and chemistry, then you have only these options. That's somewhat limiting. People should be able to take fine arts and biology. If that's their passion, let them. And maybe there will be a new field that emerges. And even if it didn't emerge, people would have learned about two different ways of thinking, how they think abstractly in fine arts and how they think in a very quantitative and in a different way in the sciences. Then the third thing that I would really recommend, particularly girls and in general school children, is to form networks. Networks of your kind. It doesn't matter what your kind, whichever is your kind, but the early on you form networks, you realize the strength of a team versus individual. And we all change our networks or expand our networks depending on what we really, what kind of time we have and what kind of interests we pursue. But these networks help brainstorm interests. Okay, I like this. What do you think? Or I don't like this. This is really an awful thing because everybody thinks we should pursue this. So, and your networks don't have to be just your friends. It can be people who have through your path, people who are somehow you can relate to what you look forward to do. In a way, I think the formal way to think about it is a mentorial network, but really it doesn't mean it's a teacher-student relationship. Because we should really separate from that. We have to are discovering the world through our own eyes. Teachers are mainly to shape and show you the path. I think this is a realization I would like school children to have very early on.
Wow, thank you so much. But what advice will you give me on my Energize campaign and how I can move it further?
I think what you started is excellent.
Thank you.
And I wish more girls would do this early, step forward, because I'm sure you found it immensely beneficial. You're going to help out a lot of girls. I would say keep going. Don't stop, because you will not see hurdles, but there would be a lot of people who would. So make it wider. Students who are interested like you can always keep them trained so that they can expand and grow much.
Thank you very much. It was really nice to see your journey and your passion for science come out so strongly. I guess having girls speaking to women like you will give them the motivation to sort of make a change in their lives, question things more and not just study because they have to study. Even if they're not pursuing science, say after high school, the fact that they have that way of thinking may give them a more logical and more skills to pursue any other career that they want to. So thank you very much for your advice and your interview.
Thanks for the time, Malik. I'm very happy to see that you are one of those children who is inquisitively started thinking about this earlier. And all the best.
Thank you very much.
For your campaign.
Thank you.